Here we are in the pilot episode of the Soul Patch podcast. This is a podcast that we are piloting today, and it is going to be a resource for you, the listener, as somebody that has struggled with addiction in the past, has somebody that you know is struggling with addiction now, and maybe you don't know where to turn or where to get help. This podcast is hosted by myself, Tom Conrad. I am also the podcast host of Real Recovery Talk, which is an addiction-based podcast, and also Scott Spiezio, and he will introduce himself in a minute, and Dr. Pamela Tambini, who is the medical director here at Rock Recovery Center, which is a treatment center that we own and operate and pretty much treat drug addicts and alcoholics on a daily basis. And so this podcast is primarily going to be for you or for your loved one that is struggling with addiction. You don't know where to turn or who to get help from, and that's what we're here for. Scott, I think now's a good opportunity for you to just share why it is that you came to the realization that this is a platform that you want to be able to utilize to share your message, because this is really this podcast does revolve around you, and you are not so much the focal point, but we're taking what happened with you and your story and putting it out there for people to learn from, to grow from, and to understand that, look, if Scott can do it, I can do it. You know, not saying that you're a lot worse off than most people, but you have a heck of a story. So introduce yourself, share with all of us why you wanted to do this and where you want it to go to.
Oh, hi, I'm Scott Spiezio. I'm a 12-year Major League Baseball player. I have 2 World Series titles in 2002 and 2006. I'm from a small town in Morris, Illinois. Grew up with a major league father. Nobody in my family had issues, and I was not into drugs or alcohol. Never saw a drug until I was about 33 and a half years old. Ran into some injuries that kind of made me start feeling sorry for myself. In the past, I'd been, involved with DARE, even had a DARE baseball card, with the drug dog and the drug DARE car. And then, after this injury I suffered in 2004, started feeling bad for myself and started drinking. In baseball, drinking is pretty prevalent. And with that, ended up getting a divorce and was introduced to cocaine, and from there on out it kind of just changed my whole life in horrible ways, and ended my playing career early, and then after I didn't have my job anymore, the thing that I've done my whole life, I just kind of snowballed downhill and found myself in a horrible hole. Went to many recovery centers, tried many things, but I just couldn't get it to click. And finally I dug myself out of it with the help of, people like you guys, some great doctors and some great counselors that helped me to find my way out. And, I'm just so grateful now to be, I'm over 2 years clean now and sober. And I'm so grateful to have my life back and my personality back. I started doing things that just weren't me, and people my true friends and family just didn't recognize me anymore when I was down in that hole. And, it showed me that, it can happen to anybody. And, I was a guy that was so anti-drugs and alcohol. I didn't even like to take aspirin, when I was playing. And for me to end up having a problem with it, and a problem that I thought at some points, I thought there was no way that I could ever not have it in my life, not have cocaine or alcohol, or at least one of them in my life. And to now just, to have no cravings, to have, no desire to do it, and just be so thankful. I want other people to know that, that you shouldn't run from the problem. You should, face it head on and ask for help. And that's the main reason that I really wanted to be a part of this, is to, to maybe help some people so they don't have to suffer as long as I did, to people so they can avoid it. Hopefully we can bring some people on, like my father who didn't know what hit him. He just, he got blindsided, but both my parents. Hopefully bring some people on, some guests and things like that, from the baseball world, some of my ex-teammates, some guys I played against. I also have a garage band, a hard rock band. And so I got to know a lot of, when I was with the Anaheim Angels, I got to meet a lot of those guys, and a lot of them have incredible stories too. So hopefully, we could get some people like that on, and it's great to be able to help anybody. And, I'm just hoping this is a great opportunity to do that. When I stopped playing and didn't have that job anymore, that foundation underneath me, it really affected me. And I'm sure that there's people out there right now that are struggling with, not working and the money becoming, not enough to eat in some cases. So, there was a lot of times that I chose alcohol over eating, and now I don't have that problem. I'm eating too much, but it's hopefully we can just put some great information out there for people that can help people.
I think that's great. I think your message is definitely going to have an impact on a lot of people. And I think one of the biggest messages that not only your story, but everybody's story is that this disease of addiction does not discriminate against anybody. I mean, here we are, you're a professional baseball player for 12 years, and your addiction impacted you through a big portion of that. And, on the surface, you're a professional baseball player. You got the world, quote unquote, by the balls. You're there, you've arrived, but deep down inside, there's this addiction that you're wrestling with and not knowing where to turn, who to talk to, and have to still put up this facade that I'm Scott. I'm the professional baseball player. I have this mask that I have to wear 24/7. So, and a lot of people struggle with that and don't know how to break through and be okay with taking that mask off. So I know for a fact that your message is going to impact so many people, and I'm eternally grateful to be able to be a part of it. So I'm excited for that. Now, let's go to Dr. Tambini, who is gracious enough to be a part of this as well. And she is amazing in so many ways, but let's just have her start talking about herself. Dr. Tambini, why don't you just share how you got involved in treating people with drug addiction, alcoholism, and what impact it is that you want to have on people, because I mean, you see this every day. So for those of you listening, myself and Dr. Tambini work together pretty much on a daily basis. So, we interact all the time, and, we see on the front lines what addiction does to people. And so Dr. Tambini, go ahead and just share a little bit about yourself and what message that you want to share throughout this podcast and what ultimately you want to come out of it.
Thank you guys for having me and for, considering me to be a part of this. I'm truly grateful. I work with Tom on a daily basis, like he said. And, what got me into this was a lot of things. one of the main things being my father, who I love dearly, has had mental health issues his whole entire life, and suffered a lot of gambling issues later on in his life. And it was, no one really talked about it or understood it, and it really impacted me, and it made me curious. And so, after that time, decided to divulge myself into learning about addiction and mental health, because a lot of with addiction comes mental health. And it's often, not discussed. It's often, put under the table, or however you call it. And so I wanted to educate myself, because, being adult and not being able to help your adult parent, leaves you feeling helpless. So I wanted to generate that, loss into something better, into helping people and growing this field. And it's a new field, because a lot of times it's not discussed. People don't want to talk about it. It's taboo. Still, even to this day, when I talk to my colleagues about it, there's a lot of unknowns, and it's a field that I feel doesn't get enough light onto it. It's often dark and hush hush. So I want to bring about knowledge, education. I think addiction should be looked at like a chronic health disease, something like diabetes or high blood pressure, right? Where we should really focus on prevention and education, and recognizing, the warning signs, and keeping people healthy before it gets to the point where, now we're in a bad situation. A person has lost their career, has, whether it's professional sports, whether you're an executive, whether you're a physician, because addiction, doesn't care. It can affect anyone, any place, anytime. And often, we get it after the fact, when someone has lost everything, when they've hit, ground zero, they're homeless, there's nothing left. And we get these patients after the fact, rather than being able to come in before and screen and try to do prevention type measures. So, the message I want to get out is just knowledge is power, and us being able to educate people to help them recognize, what is, risky use, hazardous use, what is addiction, how does it develop, and then what are the tools that we can utilize as a group to help get people on the right track and in the right direction. By trade, I'm a general internist, so I practice internal medicine. Currently, I'm studying, and I was just talking to Tom about this, I'm studying about 4 to 6 hours a day currently to become board certified in addiction medicine. So I'll be taking my test in fall of 2020. But my role is that I, consult, and I work with treatment facilities here in West Palm Beach. Rock Recovery is where I work with Tom, and provide everything from medical care to mental health care to addiction. And we work as an integrated care model, where it's, medical, clinical, with therapists, and the patients themselves. My goal, honestly, that is my goal ultimately, is to be a champion addiction medicine physician, where I lead and educate other healthcare providers as well as non-providers.
I think it's something that definitely needs to be said. Why don't you just take a minute and just talk about your fitness background and what you have done, not only to impact people in the addiction community, but we have to look at addiction as something that's not just drugs and alcohol. I mean, there's multiple things that we have to do with our bodies. So take a moment and talk about the impact that you have had from fitness, where fitness has taken you. You've had that champion mindset, obviously, for such a long time, and you're the type of person that when you set out to do something, you do it.
I guess, my background also is in fitness. I, feel like I have a connection with Scott as well because I played college basketball. And after I played successfully in college basketball, I got into CrossFit. I've always had that mindset of, just outwork every single person in the room. Do what you can do, work as hard as you can. You may not be the most talented. You may not have been born with, everything that could excel you to the top, but outwork every single person in the room. And with that, I, competed in CrossFit. I competed on a team and went to the CrossFit Games, competed in the games for 3 years. I also have my own CrossFit gym here locally in West Palm Beach, Florida. I own it with my husband, but I also utilize that mindset into addiction medicine and championing myself in learning and becoming the best person that I possibly can to educate and help people. I've utilized that to propel myself to where I'm at now, and am utilizing that mindset to expand and grow. Scott, why don't you tell us about your background in being a champion and in sports and how you
Sure.
feel you can spread the word.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. T. Growing up here in my hometown, Morris, Illinois, my dad was a 9-year major league player. He was in the World Series 3 times, 64, 67, and 68, and won in 64 and 67. So he had World Series rings. And so one of my goals was always to try to get to the major leagues, stay there for a long period of time, and win the World Series. So as far as like you were talking about working hard, I had 2 pitching mounds in my backyard. My dad would throw to me from short distance to quicken my bat, speed up, and then from regular distance, I was a switch hitter. He had me learn from both sides of the plate. We'd do game situations. I mean, everything, bunting, situational hitting, all sorts of things like that. And we'd practice just about every day. Now in the wintertime, it was a little harder. So we'd have to move into a cage, which was not as accessible as it is nowadays. So we had one cage down at my local high school. I had to get there at 6 a.m, crank it down, put the net down, crank it back up. And, it was pain in the butt. We also had, my dad had made some, so I'm actually at my parents' house right now. And in the basement here, he had made some drills that I could do every day. I'd hit off a balance beam with a rope that was hanging with a ball hanging from a rope. I'd watch myself in the mirror to make sure that I was doing my mechanics correctly. I'd hit balls into a tee. And then I had a bag that, like a tire that I would hit to develop power. And then I'd also take ground balls. I'd throw racket balls off of the concrete walls and floors and take ground balls all the time. And then in the summer, we'd go down to the local high school or whatever field we could find, and we'd take ground balls for hours and fly balls and play long catch to develop my arms. I went to the University of Illinois, and then after that, I got drafted by the Oakland A's in the 6th round in 1993. Went on to play almost 3.5 years of minor league ball, and then in September of '96, I got called up after winning the Pacific Coast League AAA championship. I had 6 home runs in that playoff round. I got called up on Friday the 13th, September 13th, 1996, and they gave me number 13. Luckily, we got rained out, and I got them to change it to 21 for my opening game, and I got hit my first at bat. I ended up playing there until through 1999, and then I got picked up by the Anaheim Angels. Played there 4 years. In 2002, the dream that I'd always dreamt of came true. And I'm sitting here in my parents' house, and I was fiddling around, and I didn't even know this was in here. But there's a magazine here, and it says Scott Spiezio of the Anaheim Angels follows in his father's footsteps. Dream come true. And it's got a picture of me and my dad with the trophy and me hitting, and it was crazy. It's just amazing. Now later on, I went to Seattle Mariners, and that's where I got hurt, and started kind of the bad decision making, where I made the one bad decision, and then I kept going further and further away from. But then I luckily got picked up after 2 horrible years with Seattle by the Cardinals, and I was so grateful for the second chance. I did have a good year, but I was still struggling with addiction and alcoholism. And we did win the World Series again, and I was wearing my father's number, which was 26. So we both had 26. When they gave us the ring in 2007, my dad was there, and he wore his old 26 jersey. I had my 26 jersey, and I think there was 47,500 people balling in that park. We were the first father-son to ever win 2 rings apiece, and the first father-sons to ever win with the same organization. So it was a historic moment. Well, I'll tell you the difference between the 2 years. In 2002, I found this thing, and I didn't even know they had it. It's a CD. It's a hometown tribute to Scott Spiezio, 2002 World Series champion, Morris Community High School, Sunday, November 10th, 2002, as heard on AM 1550 WCSJ and 95.7 FM WJOK. Now, it's crazy because every sign in Morris, they had banners everywhere, hometown hero, Scott Spiezio. They gave me the key to the city, I could go wherever I wanted, and people were just, so nice and everything. And then once I got it started, that downhill slide, and went, ended up getting a divorce after that, that injury that I suffered, where I blew out a T6 and T7. And, I started feeling bad for myself. After that, the people in my hometown started seeing the difference in me. My parents did. They weren't happy with my divorce. And I kind of lost touch with a lot of good friends and even my family. And so when 2006 came around, there was no signs in my hometown that said, hometown hero or anything. I disappointed a lot of people in the decisions I made. And, it's neat to finally come back and be a part of the community. Dr. T, you're talking about CrossFit. That's one of the things that I started doing again, because I became a couch potato, and just, all I do is pretty much drink. And, finally one of my buddies who, he was a little bit younger than me, but his dad was my high school basketball coach. And he goes, man, you're a pillar of this town, get up off your feet and let's start doing something. And so he invited me to his gym in my hometown, and I started doing that. And it's been great.
All right. Well, I appreciate you guys sharing everything. And I guess now would be a good opportunity for me to kind of share a little bit of my story and my background and why I got involved, not only in podcasting, but why I'm helping people today, but more importantly, what qualifies myself to even do what I do today. I got sober at 26 years old. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, huge Pirate fan. And it was, where I grew up was basically very blue collar. You just work, you earn your paychecks, and you go to the bar and you drink, and very not like it was exactly it, just blue collar. There wasn't a whole lot to it. You worked, you drank, you partied, you woke up and you did it again. Well, my story I started drinking at 12 years old is when I took my first drink. And, I had noticed that it really had taken gotten a hold of me at probably about 17, 18 years old. It really impacted my school and high school and stuff. And, I was big into sports, played baseball, played football, and, I thought I was really good, and I would have been really good, but, I chose partying over everything. I guess the biggest thing that I got into was archery. I shot archery for a long time, still to this day shoot archery, not on a competitive level, but when I was younger, I shot at a competitive level, Pennsylvania State Archery Association champion, 4 years in a row, first place, blah, blah, blah. Wow. But alcohol took that from me, and I could have gone a long way with archery looking back on it. But again, I chose booze. I chose the party atmosphere. I chose my friends and alcohol over practice, dedication. And so it robbed me of that. Now, that's not something that is a big part of my story. More importantly was it was me and my dad. That was it. I grew up with him, and it was I was involved in the auto industry that's all I ever knew. Cars and automotive stuff. I worked at car dealerships from the time I was 14 years old until I got sober at 26, and went to school to work on cars. I went to school at a technical school and got a degree to work on like General Motors, and so I worked at the same car dealership for about 12 years. And if you look at the way that my alcoholism progressed, it really was when I graduated high school is kind of when the wheels, like the lug nuts were starting to come loose, but the wheels weren't falling off yet. And, fast forward to like 22, 23 years old, I was in full-blown alcoholism, drinking every single day, using benzos, Xanax, Ativan, Klonopin, those sorts of things every day. And then at 24, I did I'll never do this drug. I told myself this in my head many, many times. I will never use cocaine. If you use cocaine, you're a drug addict, you're a dirtbag, you're a scumball. At 24, I started doing cocaine. And, was still working in the car industry and stuff. And at 26, by that time I had blown up engines in cars. I had, wrecked cars into telephone poles. I dropped a brand new pickup truck 10 feet in the air off the rack, and it almost killed me. But the thing is I worked right next to my dad, and my dad had been at that same dealership for 30 years. So nobody was going to say anything to me because my dad made him a ton of money, and so we're just going to sweep this under the rug. Tom, just try and straighten your act up, get it together. You're partying a little bit too much. But at 26, enough was enough. The last 3 weeks of my drinking, I totaled my car in a blackout. I somehow managed to get my car home. I fabricated this whole story, and the dealership came to my house, got my car, that literally the wheels are literally falling off of my car. They put my car on the flatbed. I rode in the flatbed to the dealership only for them to give me a rental car. Well, 2 days after they give me the rental car, I get a DUI in the rental car. Oh. And then about a week after that, I got fired from my job. And the day I got fired was September 15th, 2010. And September 15th, 2010, I was on an airplane to Florida. And September 16th, 2010 was my sobriety date. September 15th, they fired me because I didn't show up to work. I was at the bar. I was hammered. They fired me through my dad. My dad was the one that fired me. He called me and he was like, "You no longer have a job. And now, as a matter of fact, you don't have a place to live anymore. I don't know what the hell's wrong with you, but you can't stay here type thing. And so, September 16th, 2010, I found myself in Florida, in Jacksonville, going to treatment. And, I did treatment one time. I didn't, especially in doc, you can kind of speak into this, that we see a lot of times people, they get in this, like what we call South Florida treatment shuffle.
Yeah.
One treatment center to another, back and forth, blah, blah, blah. People get caught on this hamster wheel, right? And they just go to treatment after treatment after treatment. That wasn't my story. And it's not that I wasn't as bad as these people. I mean, I was 26 years old and I had the liver of a 75-year-old man. It was shutting down. I was in bad shape. Weighed like 175 pounds. And like now today I'm at 230. I just looked terrible. But I knew I was done. I went to treatment and, I did treatment for about 9 months with all levels of care. Detox, which I was in for about 2 weeks, residential, and then partial hospitalization, intensive outpatient, sober living. And I was in treatment for about 9 months and then went into straight sober living at 9 months sober and, did that for probably another 6 months. But I got my first job in treatment at a year sober. And that was really where I started cutting my teeth, I guess, in the whole treatment industry. And fast forward to today, I've worked in every aspect of addiction treatment. Back in 2014, was offered the opportunity to start Rock Recovery Center. And shortly thereafter, Dr. Tambini came on board. And this is kind of what we've been doing. Now, I've had the opportunity, and so has Dr. Tambini, to see what works and what doesn't work. And I don't want to say that we go completely against the grain, but we do things in a way that are different than what most treatment centers do. A lot of treatment centers, they're about filling beds, and look, it's a business. We got to make money. The overhead just on our place is astronomical. You'd be surprised if I told you. We do have to make money, but we also have to keep in mind, like, the end game is to get people sober. And if we can do that, the money will always be there. I'm a firm believer in that. So anyways, we've taken a strong emphasis on fitness. We've taken a strong emphasis on adventure-based. We want people move a muscle, change a thought. Let's get out. Let's do things. We're in South Florida, for God's sakes. We do snorkeling, surfing, paddleboarding, hiking, all kind of things, but still covering a lot of the same things that you would cover in a traditional treatment center. Because look, if we can't have fun being sober, what the hell's the point? Sobriety sucks if you can't have fun. It's just not worth having. I'd be the first to admit, I love being drunk. I love the way it makes me feel. And I'm a hell of a better dancer when I'm drunk than I am sober. So if we can't have fun sober, there's no point. And that's really a big thing in what we try and do. So, I've been at this now for going on 10 years. I've worked with thousands of people at this point. I started my own podcast, Real Recovery Talk, which that's been about 3 years now in the making. And it's been a pretty phenomenal story for myself.
What did you say? You said move a muscle, change the thought.
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
Yeah.
I love that. Because one of the things, I was one of those people that was in that what did you say, hamster wheel type of a thing. I was a guy that did 11 rehabs in 10 years. So I mean, I wasn't going to give up, but it wasn't like I was getting what I needed. And I guess maybe everybody has a different bottom. My bottom came later too, when my liver started, I started turning yellow, and I didn't look too good, and that really changed my perspective on things. But I love that move a muscle, change the thought, because my whole thing was like, I kept thinking, I'm I'm going to figure this out mentally. And, I get overwhelmed. I'd overwhelm myself. And I finally said, you know what? I've got 46 acres and there's a lot of trees. And, I would never go out there and enjoy it, and I finally said, you know what, there's a ton of sticks to be picked up out there. I'd have other people do it. And I finally said, you know what, I'm just going to go move a stick. That was my motto, move a stick. And it was just move one stick. And then the next day, pick up 10 and then, and just get out and do something. And just, it just changed my mindset as, I can slowly climb out of this hole if I just go out and do something. And, this is part of that. Go out and do something, go out and share your story like you guys are doing and we're doing here, so that people can know that it's not the easiest thing, but if you stay at it, never give up, and just like you said, move a muscle, change your thought process. That's a great line. I like that.
Yeah, I think it's something important that we see. I mean, really, a lot of our success, I guess, is I would accredit to even that fitness component. Doc, what would you say? What do you think about that?
I 100% agree. I mean, I look at it as, we at one point in our lives, whether it was you working with your dad or Scott at the height of your career, or myself, we all learned these things to propel us to become successful. And we kept doing these things because of positive reinforcement, because of the social network that we had, because of the people we surrounded ourselves with, right? And that helped us and mold us to become and hold us where we were. And we learned these things, but at the, drop of a dime, all of a sudden, we lose everything. We lose all of our network, all of the things that we learn how to cope with life stressors, whatever it might be. And we have to start from ground zero. And that's why I like fitness incorporated, because when you start fitness, the first thing you look at, if you go from being a couch potato who does nothing all day and you see someone doing CrossFit or someone working out, you're like, I can never do that. It's not possible. But you like you, Scott, how you said you did one stick at a time, which led to 10, which led, it's analogous to working out. You have this end goal, but to get from point A to point B, you have to learn new skills. You have to start over, and you have to learn, what is going to give me positive reinforcement? What is going to allow me to get through this? Which baby steps and which road, because there's many roads, is going to get me to that end goal. And I think, and that's why I really like fitness. Not only does it offer, the natural relief of stress and endorphin release, and, that gives you that runner's high or that exercise high, but underneath it all is every single person is learning baby steps, how to become successful in their own way, and making their own path again, and using their tools to become successful, and also using like nutrition, right? When you start going to a gym, whatever gym it might be, you build a new support network of people who encourage you, who reinforce you, who are there for you. You learn new social skills, new traits. So, and that's why I think fitness is so important in all of this, and it's often left behind, because there's so many things that you can learn from it.
Yeah. I think that with the physical side, there's definitely baby steps that you take. Also on the mental side, in baseball, there's the mental side, there's the physical side, there's little things, or big things like nutrition, all sorts of things. I practiced a lot on the field. But also in the gym too, we'd lift after every game. Most of us would. I really took that seriously. But mentally, the work that I did mentally, I had had a sports hypnotherapist that I work with. My dad really got me into the mental side of that as well. And I think with addiction, there's so many different, different aspects of gaining information and tools, like you said, to help us. And, we'll probably end up talking about a lot of these tools, that different ways to help. Fitness is one. There's the AA based groups. There's, I'm a Christian and heavily into my faith. That's helped me a great deal. Building a network, a social network around me. They always say change people, places, and things, and that's one thing that I had to do. I had to start saying no to people and changing the people that I was around, and really getting back down to my original foundation, and taking all these things that I learned from rehab, from doctors, from counselors, and putting them all together with that, that notion of move a muscle, change a thought. That's the whole key of putting them together and really creating a battle strategy, because it is a battle. Some people, it takes a long time. I've heard people that have been to, many dozens of rehabs and are doing well to this day. And then I've heard people like Tom that it took one time, so, this is hopefully what we can provide is some information so that you can create, people can create their own battle strategy.
I think one of the biggest things that, at least one of the biggest messages that I would want, and I continue to try and put out, through this podcast or my own, or through any conversation with parents and loved ones and addicts themselves, is that just don't lose hope that there is a solution out there. And it is something that is oftentimes people forget about it. It's like they get in this mindset of hopeless. There's nothing for me here. There's nothing more to look forward to. I've burned every bridge. I've destroyed every relationship. Even if I wanted to help, who would I ask? Who would I turn to? Who would I talk to? And a lot of people get to that point and just throw in the towel. And I think it's something, especially now, which, look, the first quarter of 2020 is going to be written in history books for years to come with this whole COVID corona stuff. I mean, political stuff aside, addiction is on the rise now more than ever. Alcoholism is on the rise now more than ever. But I think one of the biggest messages that we would need to share with people is to not lose hope. And hopefully, in the end, what we can do, the three of us, is provide people with resources. We can provide them with guidance on who to reach out to, treatment centers to reach out to, different ways to get sober, like a bunch of different things. Because look, there's like the saying goes, there's more than one way to skin a cat. There is. Like, there's more than one way to get sober. And it's not, I don't think that we're going to try and force some sort of belief system on anybody or anything of the sorts, but just provide people with answers, provide people with resources, but more importantly, provide them with hope that there is an opportunity out there for sobriety. You just have to find it, and you have to be willing to work for it too. All right, so I think we've covered a lot in this pilot episode of the Soul Patch podcast, right? Sounds good. I think, again, just to reiterate some future topics that we can look forward to and talking about, open discussion, is resources for people to get help, what it's like living in addiction, how to get out of addiction if you're a loved one, who you can reach out to get some help from. Because, look, we have to face it, that addiction is a family disease. It's something that doesn't just affect the addict or the alcoholic. It affects everybody around us. And So resources for loved ones, there's going to be so many topics that we're going to be discussing with professional sports players and family members of professional sports players, musicians, family members of musicians, and just anybody that has been affected by addiction in some way, shape, or form. And I think it's very important to say that, again, we're a resource for people, and there should not be one person that goes through life thinking that there's no help for them or no hope for them moving forward if they're battling with addiction, because it's not true. It's not truth. There is help for them. And I think that's going to be one of the things that we're going to be discussing the most, or sharing that message. Scott or Dr. T, do you guys have any final thoughts you want to share before we kind of close out?
Yeah, Tom, I'm just excited, that we're going to be able to give people hope, to share knowledge that we've all gained through our own experiences. And, it's been a long road for me, but, if I can do it, anybody can do it. And I've seen so many people come out on the other side. And I think that message of hope for not only the addicts and alcoholics, but also the family members of them too. And, I'm hoping to bring some of my friends, teammates, ex-teammates, and band friends, and maybe even their families on to talk about this more. And I'm excited to be a part of it.
That's awesome, Scott. Thank you. And Dr. T, what about you? Some final thoughts?
I just hope to spread knowledge. I just want to educate people, whether it's addicts themselves, their family members, friends, everyone involved. Like you said, it's about knowledge, prevention, and preventing catastrophe and the end, and that we see from all the effects of addiction, and educating people and helping them find the right way and how to better themselves and better those around them.
That's great. I think we're going to do a good job at that. All right, so I think that about wraps it up. I had a blast. I think this was a very good first episode for the three of us. I'm looking forward to all the future episodes to come out. If you want to reach out to us, there's a couple of ways that you can get a hold of us at this moment. You can go to rockrecoverycenter.com, email hello@thinkyellow.com, THINKYELLO, no W.com, Think Yellow, hello@thinkyellow.com.